first with the whole Overwatch 2 PvE got cancelled story. We will do a little reaction to Bellular's to the video of Bellular news, and I will then do a little switch to what I personally think that means for Diablo 4. Let's dive into the video, I would say.
Overwatch 2 is in a little bit of trouble with its community, to say the very least. Now, you've probably seen headlines all across the internet saying Overwatch 2 cancels PvE. That is literally not true, but
well, kinda.
Things have changed, and things have not changed in a particularly good direction, especially in terms of player expectations. And
True.
I think overall, the image of what Overwatch 2 was supposed to be. A lot of people thought Overwatch 2, why are we doing this? And yeah, we're continuing to ask that question, as Hard Drive just posted. Overwatch 2 has cancelled its hero mode PvE, its reason to exist, which, yeah.
So I mean that's basically not super true, because there were several reasons for Overwatch 2 to exist. Because originally it was basically planned as a second game besides Overwatch 1, right? That's what they told us at the beginning, that Overwatch 2 will be a free-to-play game beside Overwatch 1, but that both clients of those games would be able to play with each other, and Overwatch 2 would be just the Battle Pass version with PvE mode and slightly, I don't want to say enhanced, because for some reasons I think it's more a sidestep, but with a different, better modern graphics. And but yeah, still the biggest reason for Overwatch 2 to exist was originally the whole PvE mode, right? And that's what got trashed. And I think the most interesting question that we have to ask now is what that means for the game, right?
Yeah, that was kind of the main draw of Overwatch 2.
Also because, as we know, the whole Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2 playing together thing didn't happen, and they basically released a game very similar to Warcraft 3 Reforged. So they basically dumped Overwatch 1, the game that players paid $40 or $20 for. Depends if it was on sale or not. And yeah, and they basically, I think Kira from Kira TV said it very fitting, kind of rug pulled the game. So it's okay, let's
right. It was overall.
Let's watch the video.
A fresh start for us, right? No loot boxes, new heroes, new maps, new modes, and a real swing into the story of this world that people really liked through voice lines and shit.
True.
They actually wanted the big thing, to play a big campaign with their friends, to have a full game that they could sink their teeth into.
Yep.
And now things are changing a little bit, because per a stream on May 16th from the developers, the PvE mode is not a mode. It's basically just content delivered within the same seasonal style as Overwatch, just made with new tools so that the team can focus on the live service multiplayer. And suffice to say, people are not particularly happy about this across the internet. This is a crazy story.
I mean, how would they, right? Because at this point, with those with a scrapped PvE mode, the whole argument in favor for Overwatch 2 is gone, right? We had those PvE limited time modes already in Overwatch 1 in the arcade section of the menu, basically. And Besides that, the only changes that we have for now are basically the visual changes. The few gameplay changes, like they overhauled heroes and team structure from 6 versus 6 to 5 versus 5 as far as I know. And the biggest change, at least in my opinion, is the monetization change. And that is basically they took the loot box system that was, in my opinion, a very nice loot box system because it was very fair. Because you, well, just got loot boxes by playing the game. Imagine that, right? And without any kind of limitation, you're just leveling up. And every time you're leveling up, you get a loot box. And besides that, you had the arcade modes every week where you could earn, I think, 2 or 3 loot boxes more. And it worked, right? It wasn't a bad system at all. I think alone within event time frames, it got a little bit stressing because you usually didn't get a lot enough loot boxes to get your hands on the legendary skins and whatever. But besides that, it was, in my opinion, a very fair system, also because you never lost anything. Even when you got the duplicates, those duplicates, basically, well, changed into coins, and if you got enough of these coins, like you didn't get a lot of them, but still, if you get enough of those coins, you could just buy specific skins, like that, like without any hooks attached. And as I said, I think it was basically one of the best loot box systems that we had. And they basically took that loot box system, trashed it, and replaced it with one of the worst battle pass systems that we have, in my opinion. With everything that nobody likes. A lot of FOMO, very limited in terms of how fast you are able to level it at all. You have basically it doesn't keep itself alive. Like for example, Fortnite as the prime example. Just by leveling up the one battle pass, you will be able to, well, buy the next battle pass, and that's, in my opinion, a very fair system, right? Because the main thing of a battle pass is not that they make a lot of money, but the main thing of a battle pass is its FOMO, in a sense that it keeps players playing the game within those 3-month time frames, if they care about the skins that are included. And so, especially if you have some form of daily missions or weekly missions that basically are the main way to level up, you basically keep players playing the game every freaking day, right? And that's basically the original purpose of a battle pass. But especially Korean battle passes just went completely crazy, sometimes added a second one. What is something we will come to when we talk about Diablo 4. And it's not cool in my opinion, especially with then that all of those new skins that we would had in Overwatch 1 within the whole loot box system are now only available in a shop, and that for very hefty prices. Like that's right? And yeah, I mean, you're paying for what, 2 skins, the amount of money people paid for the whole game, Overwatch 1. And that's pretty bad. It's also pretty bad because they sold basically pre-order packages for Overwatch 2 with the promise of the PvE mode, what is also not there. So overall, the whole change that we have at this point is straight up worse. Except for the gameplay, but let's be honest, the gameplay could have been just a patch. So, yeah, right?
Though I'm going to give it to you balanced. We're going to go absolutely in depth to everything going on, what is coming out and what is not coming out. So, the background here. The 2019 announcement, very big, glitz, glam, and a co-op story PvE mission framework that would finally give people in-game story. The one thing that they've been craving with really mechanically interesting.
Really nice.
That is compared to what they had expected at the time, which was occasional seasonal PvE stuff that kind of just came in the form of an event. Now, this was in fact one of only 2 listed features in the press kit from that 2019 event, right? And it actually took up most of the page. People were promised story missions, which was basically the same as an Overwatch 1 narrative mission, which in fairness, those were brilliant, and hero missions, which were supposed to be mechanically different missions that changed how heroes play via customizable talent trees. But of course, Overwatch 2 changed all of this.
So it was basically, you had a story mode, right, with probably the idea of most people was basically having a story mode that, well, tells you the story, including everything that makes Blizzard games, including great cinematics, at least halfway decent storytelling, interesting, good character designs, everything that we already knew from the cinematics that we have, from the comics, from... Do we have books from Overwatch? Oh. Good question. I don't know, but at least from the comics and the cinematics that we know, right? So that was the story, and I think that is a great thing for a lot of people. Also, we have to keep in mind that Overwatch 2 originally was meant to be, well, pay to play. Also, like you pay to play, buy to play. So you had to buy the whole PvE stuff, right? So technically, what we have now is they could have literally just patched Overwatch 1 with all the gameplay changes and visual updates and all, without touching anything else like monetization, and then just release Overwatch 2, what is then just the PvE mode of the game, which they could have been sold separately. No problem. And the second mode is, as far as I could imagine, it was some form of a mix of Warframe and Borderlands, maybe, at least when I look at those talent trees. Do we have them? Here, when we look at those talent trees, it looks a lot like Borderlands, if you ask me. And the whole thing with the mission sounds, at least to me, a lot like Warframe. Like you have the hub, right? Probably more menus, and then you can just hop into different missions and grind gear with increasing difficulties or whatever.
Took up most of the page. People were different missions that changed how heroes play via customizable talent trees. But of course, Overwatch 2 changed all of this. It underwent a massive pivot to be heavily focused onto PvP. And we thought, okay, this is better than the franchise dying before PvE comes out. A lot of people still felt betrayed, and the 2 in Overwatch 2 really didn't make that much sense, considering it was absolutely an Overwatch, you know, 1.1, right? Not even a 0.5. And in June 2022, we were told that PvE would come, but they said...
I mean, you have to keep in mind that it could have been simply some kind of an add-on, right? They could have just trashed the 2 in the name and just make it an add-on, right? Maybe just make Overwatch 1 much cheaper or free-to-play, as they did now with Overwatch 2. And yeah, well, put the PvE mode as an add-on, a little bit like Fortnite now handles the save the world mode, right? But like it's literally just a point in a menu that just drags you, that switches over to the PvE mode. So wouldn't have been a problem. I'm very sure about that.
A hell of a lot less, right? They said that it will arrive in 2023 as a part of the seasonal content structure, unlocking gradually throughout the year, and it will move the story and lore of Overwatch forward and feature varied encounters. Now, you'll very much note that they didn't mention anything else there. They didn't talk about the very replayable mode. They didn't talk about the hero customization.
True.
Remember, going back to that BlizzCon, what people were hyped about was the idea of like, oh, this is Tracer. I can customize. I can unlock things. I can have talents. I can make this Tracer be my Tracer. And then I can have crazy combos with other heroes, and it's going to be an incredible, co-op game in the same way that I maybe love playing Left 4 Dead. Now it's that wrote large the hero format in the world.
Left 4 Dead is a good example.
That is what people got excited about.
I mean, in the end, let's be honest, that kind of hero shooter stuff always comes down to everyone wears the same shit with a specific hero and has the exact or almost exact skill trees. So I am personally not, it's not the biggest selling point for me to say, oh, I can skill different than anyone else and then do 20% less damage than any of them. Like, won't happen, right? So usually in that kind of game, the end game is the hunt for collectibles, achievements, and especially cosmetics. Cosmetics are usually big, right?
Because that is what Blizzard basically promised them and marketed to them, okay? And at the launch of Overwatch 2, we instead got a footnote about PvE that said the development work is taking place and it will roll out next year with plans released at a later date. Of course, that date is now, and we're seeing it as a part of, Season 5 and Season 6. So, Season 5, what do we got? We've got the Quest Watch, limited time event, Mischief and Magic, Cinematics, Summer Games, and then Season 6 is our story missions with a new support hero, Hero Mastery, and of course then other things happening in Season 7 and beyond. And really what's happened here is that the PvE content is now functionally the same that it was in Overwatch 1, right? And that means that
we also, we just need to look at this roadmap. Like, the promise of a whole mode, right? Of a whole PvE mode that brings something to the game that might have also attracted a whole different demographic of players, because they are just a completely different type of players that just like to increase numbers, like damage, armor, health, whatever, increase levels, skill shit, grind gear, whatever, right? That was replaced in that cancellation interview with a roadmap that literally just shows the same stuff we already had in Overwatch 1 for years, right? A limited time event, nothing special, nothing new, whatever. Mischief and Magic. Cinematics, it's nothing different that we that's nothing special, right? We got cinematics before. All of them are great. I'm not saying that it's not worth to put out cinematics. Not at all. They are great, usually. And then it's just like, we have a new hero, some new PvE story missions. Like, it will probably be very similar to those that we already have. I mean, I don't know how many people are really into those PvE missions that we already know from Overwatch 1, because most people that I know maybe played it so often that they have to play it for the rewards, and after that either hunt for the biggest difficulty or, well, then just stop playing it. Because if you're playing Overwatch, you're usually playing Overwatch for the PvEP. Because the PvE is, well, it also doesn't feel great in my opinion. And then, new map and player progression system. Probably some form of achievements or stuff like that, right? Nothing special.
With a new support hero beyond. And really what's happened here is that the PvE content is now functionally the same that it was in Overwatch 1, right? And that means that development plans have changed humongously since 2019. They've basically rescoped this, they've cut a lot of their systems out. Now this is a case where it does not make sense to blame the developers. This is in the context of a live service game in an IP where clearly Overwatch 1 died to make Overwatch 2 happen, and now they've truly killed the 2 in Overwatch 2 from a broad game experience perspective, and instead I think they are getting the content that they happened to make and they're putting that back into Overwatch 1.5, this bizarre homunculus that we're now all playing that is not quite what was pitched to us in 2019, but I will say is still quite a fantastic game. It's just that they obviously managed to lose that cultural mindshare. But we still should be critical here with the way that this is being.
I mean, as I said, it's a good game, but 90% of that good game, except for the visual changes and the gameplay changes, is something we had before, and it's something where a lot of players paid $40 for. With the promise of just being able to play the game without any crazy amount of FOMO. That's in my opinion not an argument, and I think it's crazy to see how many people are still defending these changes, especially on Twitter. I mean, Twitter, right? How many people are defending these changes with that mindset, but it's now free to play, it's great, and the battle pass is so much better than the loot boxes, and I'm all the time wondering, are those just 12-year-olds that have hours upon hours upon hours to play several games with battle passes and this FOMO bullshit? And that are completely ready to spend all that time. Like we are talking with those battle pass systems, we're basically talking about some form of a commitment over years to this one game, because usually when you're invested in a game, you don't want to miss anything, right? That's what our little reptile brain tells us. And the problem is that most people simply don't have the nerves and time to play several games with a battle pass system. It simply doesn't happen. I play one game. I'm playing one game with a battle pass system, and that is Fortnite. And the sole reason that I'm playing Fortnite at this point, despite that I really don't like the last few battle passes, is simply because I don't have to pay more for the battle pass. I can just, it's easy to get the 100 levels. Within those 100 levels, there are the V-Bucks, the currency that you need to unlock a new battle pass, and it's fine, right? It's very chill. I don't need to spend horrendous amounts of time. I'm just going in every 2 weeks, play a few rounds, do some quests, and leveling up 20 levels or whatever. There's really not a lot of commitment. It's very chill if you're not going for the 200 levels, right? With those ugly recolors. If it would be different, I would trash Fortnite too, right? No question, I don't have the nerves, I'm stressed out. I'm also kind of, it's a weird thing, but I'm also bored by battle passes. It's not an exciting system, in my opinion. It's just, I mean, originally we had progress systems within the game, for example, imagine Call of Duty, the Modern Warfare series. You were just progressing by playing the game, you're progressing your weapons, and you got new camos and achievements for those weapons. In the end, you got the golden weapons. You progress by leveling up your account over and over again with the prestige levels and stuff. That was great. It just worked, and it had a lot of motivation for people to just keep playing the game whenever the players, wanted to play the game. That is not the case for battle passes, and it's just frustrating and stresses me out. At this point, that's also a reason why I won't play Diablo 4, is simply I am at this point actively dodging games that have battle passes. Because I don't even want to dip my toes into these systems that then make me mentally ill by having FOMO every time I see some time-limited bullshit coming up. So, yeah. Whatever. Sorry.
Been framed, and the way that management have tried to sort of sell this whole thing at us. They let expectations fester like this. Now, if you've seen people say PvE is cancelled, that's wrong. There is PvE in Overwatch 2, but in a way, it's half of what was promised in the 2019 materials. We do have the story missions, but we don't have the hero missions that have the talents and all of that.
But I think, yes, technically, yes. But I think that when they originally announced the whole thing with a story mission and those hero missions, people had something very different in mind. Like really some kind of a at least halfway decent, premium-ish story experience. And let's be honest, those story PvE missions that we have since Overwatch 1 are not that, right? They are not like, you're not super excited to go into them. It's not even necessarily a story that is god damn it. Vocabulary blackout. Shit. It's not a continuing story from PvE mission to PvE mission, and they're also not like particularly connected, like they kind of are through the lore, but it's still very different to a story PvE mode, right? And let's be honest, that the hero missions, the whole hero system, is gone. It's like, yeah, it's gone, right? We didn't get anything out of the whole PvE stuff, right? So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of trying to argue in favor for changes that are clearly not made in favor for the players. Like, just please don't, right?
Here's somebody saying, hero mode is not the same as story mode. Story mode is alive and well. So what that basically means is that the mechanical changes that required the switch to Overwatch 2 and the killing of Overwatch 1 are now essentially pointless because those mechanical changes haven't really happened. And I think for a lot of people, they just see the path not taken, where Overwatch 2 has evidently wasted years and years and years of development, incurred massive technical costs in redoing everything in the new version of the engine. And what have players got for this? Ultimately, they've got, in some ways, a better experience because maybe you prefer 5v5, and certainly the content cadence with new maps and heroes is a lot more strong. But what you lost was years of support for Overwatch 1. And I think Overwatch's cultural mindshare, which absolutely withered on the vine. Now, as for why this happens, so GameSpot's Tamura Hussein took Aaron Keller, who is the game director, and the executive producer Jared Nuss to task in a fairly pressing interview that digs into what happened here. So we're going to talk about some highlights, right? So GameSpot said, the big talking point is the direction you're taking with PvE, that you basically aren't doing it. So what Aaron says to this is, we are doing part of what the team set out to do, but not the entirety of what was discussed in BlizzCon 2019. So the real focus is the story missions and that experience as opposed to the more open-ended hero mode and that stuff. Now, that hero mode, really your framing, your pitching of that is that it is a game that you can play and play and play and play, right? So it's not just like you do the missions that you would get in Overwatch 1, and you'd have the harder difficulty, which would actually...
I mean, usually those modes end at some point, unless they're really going for those unlimited increasing of arbitrary numbers of your character or Paragon levels like in Diablo 3 or something like that. But I still don't like the framing, right? I mean, we have to see what they're effectively going to do with what they have from the development of the PvE mode, and how that will hopefully positively affect the story missions that we get on Overwatch 2 from now on. But I don't think that this will be anyhow near what people expected the story mode to be. So I really don't like this. Yeah, like well, yes, we did cancel kind of the PvE mode, but we also didn't, because we still have PvE things in the game.
Actually be like fair play to them, hard, and you feel a great achievement for doing that. But that's very different to the idea of a full game, right? You know the way somebody just goes to play a bunch of Destiny PvE for an evening, and they just keep on doing that because they want to progress their characters, unlock new things. That promise is kind of gone. Now, Timur did press in this, saying that it's fair to say that the experience showed in the first reveal is not going to be the one that will be released at any point, to which Aaron says, yes, exactly. We are definitely not doing the hero mode and the talents and the power progression system. Now, it's a bit weird. I mean, after the Avengers and so many games that have came out, we're all just like, oh, great, power progression, live service, and all that. But I think for a lot of people, having that in a PvE co-op shooter in a world that they already love would actually have been a really high-value experience. That they could play a campaign full of those story missions and then have this massive, meaty, replayable game that they could really sink their teeth into for potentially even years as more content is added.
Also, we have to keep in mind also, right? The original announcement was in 2019, right? So that was a few years ago. And back then, Blizzard also had some kind of a not that bad reputation, right? It was still on the decline, no question, but they had a better reputation. And the thing always was that people expect Blizzard to be the company that takes the things that have a generally good idea and then actually make them good. So as he said, he mentioned the Avengers game. It's not a good game, right? Isn't it dead at this point also, right? Isn't it? I don't know. Whatever. And usually if you say, hey, that's basically what we're going to do, then people expect that Blizzard takes this and does it in really good. Right, or that's, again, I think the comparison to Warframe might be a good thing too, or maybe Destiny 2 or something like that. So, right, it's the expectation for Blizzard as a company, especially also with the budget that they have, is very, very different. So I think the comparison to people are bored of these games or already it's saturated because we have Avengers and the Destiny and the Borderlands and blah, 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 is true, but I think just half true, right? Because just people expected a premium experience of that kind of game from Overwatch 2.
Like, that is what people were really excited about. To take another example from the Blizzard library, and I think this is a really, really important one that actually illustrates issues. So I love StarCraft 2. I know not everybody does, but I absolutely adore that game for its competitive PvP, right? 1v1. However, actually
StarCraft fans
mode, and I have this directly
sad people, probably.
People who are on the StarCraft 2 team, Blizzard have said it themselves, it is that in Legacy of the Void, or whatever it was, the co-op, basically the co-op, like, hero sort of based mode, was by far the most popular thing. And I think that really illustrates StarCraft 2, the thing you think about is the PvP. Do you know what the thing that the most people actually played? It was that co-op, replayable with progression mode. That is what people wanted for Overwatch 2, and that is not what they're going to be getting. And that fundamentally means that
that's what I mean, right? You have PvP often, that is. And when I say PvP, we are often thinking about the whole thing, but often PvP in a general sense is more the ranked mode, right? That's where the relatively small portion of the summary of the player base is doing the actual PvP competitive gaming stuff. Then you have probably 10 times as much people that are mostly playing some arcade modes, just playing just for fun. That's mostly maybe also people that play those PvE modes from Overwatch. And besides that, they're just playing casually the game because they just want to kill some time after work or whatever, right? Like these heavy PvP oriented things. Same goes also for MMOs. Never work. At least not if you want to cater to a big global / casual audience, right?
PvE is going to be a fun side piece to the proper, real PvP experience. And that means for a bunch of people who love the world but didn't want a PvP competitive shooter, now all they really have is arcade and buying skins as opposed to unlocking plenty of them for free. So I think you can see that within this framework, Overwatch 2 is never, ever going to come close to meeting its promise in the market. So Keller basically says that a year and a half ago, they reassessed their plans for the game after a really large portion of the team working on PvE impacted the development of the ongoing support for the game, right? In that there basically wasn't any, because there was 2 years of no heroes and, approaching 3 years with no maps. They were putting all their time into PvE, and that was just killing the game. Now, we already knew about this pivot, that they essentially just grabbed what they could with Overwatch 2 and shoved it into the game that we've got right now, okay? So we know that, but I think the bit here that's really quite rough is we now seemingly think that they've been sitting on this bad news for a long time and just not really saying. I mean, obviously, if they said it, it would have blunted the launch of Overwatch 2 massively. So they likely did make the correct strategic move, but, obviously, they've got to pay the price. He says, that's when we rapidly shifted the resources on our team to work on launching Overwatch 2. That's what came out last October. They realized they couldn't release a big chunk of story content like a big campaign and still provide the live service support for the shooter that they wanted.
Yes, I'm live again. Okay, great. Great, I exist again. Where did we stop? Okay, then let's talk about that again. So, again, I don't know when the stream died, for whatever reason. When they reassessed their plans for Overwatch 2 1.5 years ago, so basically a half a year ago, Overwatch 2 got launched. It means they already thought about it 1 year prior to that. And, well, that kind of feels a little bit like they literally lied to us half a year ago, right? Because, well, imagine they have launched Overwatch 2 and basically said, yeah, so, this PvE mode that we have originally planned, well, that kind of just, well, we ditched that one, right? To make you pay for battle passes and overpriced skins and yay. Ooh.
Especially not when they were, launching Overwatch 2 and had to make all the content for that while still having a good run rate on their PvE content. Quote, so we made the decision later last year we would focus all our efforts on the live game and all our PvE efforts on this new story arc that we're launching in Season 6. Then on top of that, to keep all our PvE efforts or co-op efforts invest in our seasonal releases rather than one big boxed release. That firmly solidifies Overwatch 2 as free-to-play live service game. It firmly means that there is no, like, it's Overwatch 2 release day, everybody, let's come with our friends, play all the big campaign, right? It's not going to be a launch day like that.
Yeah, it's basically
the questioned about why the resources
very normal live service stuff
PvE stuff
that people do.
They basically pointed out that scope and stuff like that is hard when it changes. PvP, as promised, was not going to be feasible. They realized that Overwatch 2 PvE was a functionally separate game from PvP. Here's a quote, you're looking at thousands of talents to make everything just get the game out the door, plus all the content and the missions you'd be playing to get that, and it's a pretty gargantuan ask for a team. I mean, you really do have to wonder, is the death of this why Jeff Kaplan leaves? Does he just end up being like, well, we're Blizzard, we make the new game, we make the game, it takes what it takes, then it comes out. And you have a thing there where the Jeff way would have been maybe making the best game, but then by way of meeting the needs of the current Overwatch community that they did have, it would have meant no support for Overwatch 1, which also would have been bad. Hard to say. I would love...
So, I mean, what it basically... I mean, the whole Jeff Kaplan thing, that's tinfoil hat stuff, right? That's pure speculation. Because there's so many reasons why someone might leave a company. But I think... the whole argument against the PvE mode in the end was, oh yeah, we would have we have just that much resources, and that this planned PvE mode would have needed development. Crazy thought, I know, but it's like how many talents? Like, you have to understand, like, the story mode, okay, I can understand that, but at least the hero mode, it's hard for me to believe that this is so much work for them that it couldn't have been somehow realized, that thing, because it's not like they had to develop a game from the ground up. They had already a lot of assets. They had the heroes, they had at least the base is already there, right? The general gameplay was already developed. Unless I don't think they would change, like, how the shooting behaves or whatever. And it's the argument is, yeah, like, we to bring out the PvE mode, the story mode, we actually had to develop it, so we decided to not do that and push everything into developing some cheap season stuff and a few cosmetics that we can then just sell for $20-30 every quarter year. That's it, right? It literally says, okay, we didn't want to spend those resources on the mode. After 3 years, by the way, right? After announcement, like, I have no idea. Like, we have indie studios that are able to realize that kind of game. How is Blizzard not able within 3 years to do the same with a game where a lot of what they're going for already existed? Like, they had a style, they had the general lore, the story. That's a lot of time they don't have to spend anymore, right? And I don't get how they basically have nothing after 3 years of development, after basically completely stopping to do anything for Overwatch 1, right? After, what, 2 years or what? Overwatch 1 was basically abandoned from them. It's somehow embarrassing, in my opinion.
Of some of these people to speak up in the future, perhaps. So they essentially said that with this PvE work, basically it's a big black hole, right? It just didn't look like there was a definitive end date in sight when we'd finally be able to put a stamp on it, or that end date was years away, and it no longer felt we could be doing that to our players, or we could be doing that, with the live game that they were running. And I think rightly to this GameSpot then pressed them and like, hey, this separate, this proper PvE, this was the whole justification for the 2 in Overwatch 2. Noose and Keller then pushed back, saying that hero mode might be gone, but there is still some PvE content. Quote, no, we're going to do PvE stuff all the time. It's just not in the format, right?
Yeah, it's like we are doing that shoved in. Like, I mean, the PvE mode that we have is just, it doesn't feel like a PvE mode. It's literally just some arcade mode in the PvP game, and it does feel like exactly that. For the topic of literally ditching the game, I don't think the decision itself was bad, right? If you're not able to execute what you have, it's, in my opinion, usually better decision to at some point reevaluate your situation, and in the worst case just trash it so you have more resources to spend on something that's actually adding value to one of your products. But the problem here is that we are talking about an announcement 3 years ago, right? So, and when they say it's a black hole, it literally sounds like they had, I don't know, a year ago, no idea what the hero mode and the story mode would be. So either they did the announcement literally at the beginning of the development, where literally not even the concept phase was done. What is very important, because if you don't have a concept, you don't know where to start and what the final result is meant to be. Star Citizen. And then you just keep going and going and going, change things up, and it just stretches the development time so much more. Like you could literally develop, I mean, yes, Star Citizen, like you could extend development time. It's not feasible, and that's usually also the reason why it is not necessarily a bad thing to have a publisher, because they can just say, hey, guys, that's the deadline, right? Or at least the rough deadline, and that's the goal. Do develop your game to that goal and don't do more. Because if not, we have designers, leads that just add and change things over and over again, and just shit doesn't get done. And that is bad for the development, and that is bad also for the players, of course. So I think it's a good thing. But the problem then is that we got an announcement 3 years ago, right? 3 years ago is just, and it's literally was just a bad point in time to do the announcement for the PvE mode, for Overwatch 2 in general. If they didn't know already if that is feasible to do, or, well, if they have to trash it in the end like they did now.
That people wanted. So GameSpot then pressed them on the impact of PvE in Overwatch 1 and the desires that were there from fans. So they said, basically they reaffirmed that there is still PvE and co-op in the style of the first game, right? For the people who can't get their lore fix from PvP, that Season 6 is the start of the actual narrative about the game's characters in the actual game world, unlike Season 4's Star Watch or Season 5's fantasy events that use costumes as a framing. Then with this, there will be cinematics, there will be a lore codex, but they did confirm there will be no new hero missions that feature specific abilities for PvE. It will simply be regular heroes using their regular mechanics, so yes, hero mode is dead. Here's another quote. If the variant mechanics come back...
that's basically what I meant, right? That we basically have to see what they're going to repurpose from the development that they had for the PvE mode and how much of it they're able to put into the, well, PvP arcade PvE modes that we have since Overwatch 1. I think if they're able to pull it off with cinematics and all, I'm curious how they are going to implement it. Like, I mean, Lore Codex literally sounds like that kind of a menu you can go in and have some little info boxes of characters and shit, like the stuff that nobody uses, basically, in any game. And, but I'm curious to see how they will implement it. Right? I mean, maybe it will have some form of a connected story, narrative, whatever. We will see. So those 2-3 years they developed the PvE mode just does not go to waste completely.
And the team would like to bring them back, they would be in a different form than a co-op game experience. And they were then quick to say the development time had not really been wasted. As an example, the Junkenstein Wrath of the Bride event, that had been designed with the PvE tech. All of those tools can make their PvE modes more interesting. I will definitely say, as me and Matt sat down and said to you, Wrath of the Bride was a fantastic event. It was really fun. It was really well designed. It was full of character, like big thumbs up to it. They went on to say then that things like the Battle for Olympus stuff that's kind of like non-canonical, that let them experiment and play with the new tools, messing around with hero abilities, that kind of thing. And we should expect more of that, even if there is even some PvP in that. And they basically framed that there will be no adverse impact on the team working on those tools and systems. I would certainly say, for the talents that they designed, there's probably a humongous amount of work in the bin. Let's just be real, right?
Yes.
Now, some of those talents, I mean, they have been made. Could they recycle them back in for some reason? Yes. The tools and the tech, well, they probably have better tools and better tech. And if you now have a situation where Overwatch 2 has quite a lot of content on an ongoing basis, that is probably in large part because of the new tools and new tech that allow them to make that content faster, which is a good thing. So it is not.
I mean, probably also because they already have some form of PvE missions and they can just repurpose to use it, like the Overwatch 1 PvE missions. So, yeah. Besides that, I think the whole thing with we experimented in the last 2 seasons with this tech already, again sounds a lot like they already knew that they would trash the PvE mode before they release Overwatch 2, still with the promise, hey, you get the PvE mode later. What is again? No, now that
not all bad,
got cancelled.
Overwatch 2 is, if you wanted a PvE Overwatch because you weren't interested in the PvP, but you did want that world, yeah, you don't have that. You can play that stuff when the seasons come out, but it's not going to be the full game that you wanted. Here's another quote from...
I'm also curious if they will be time limited. Right? So, I mean, they could technically just give you a list, like story missions, and then you can just play the co-op mode whenever you want, or they will do it in a time-limited way, and that would be... that's the whole Battle Pass thing again. I really don't like that. You have these 4 weeks to play this mode, and after that it will be gone, or maybe at least until the same kind of event comes up again, and then you can play it. And it's again, it pulls the whole decision making from the player, right? It's, in my opinion, not a good experience to have it like that. It's fine for those funny PvE modes that we had now, but if they now go for a connected, continuing, ongoing story, I hope they will keep them in the co-op section, in the arcade co-op section, forever, right? So you can just choose to play it whenever you want.
Keller. There's a reason why we're being more transparent here. We want to be able to give players more context into our development process, and we want people to have more context around why we have made that decision. It was going to be a painful decision for this team to make. It was really hard for us to go through this experience. I kind of went on, saying along those lines, which undoubtedly is true. They know this is a massive L. They know that, like, the big ambitions that justified the existence of this project, that's now dead, and they've had to kill it. And they are probably right, in everything that they say. I don't think that these guys are, some terrible lying corporate plants. I think that ultimately, like, the rubbers hit the road, and a lot of bad decisions were made in the past. A lot of mismanagement happened. And when that mismanagement happens, who are the people that lose? The players and the actual boots on the ground front line.
Yes, but again, a lot of the things that we basically have seen in that video alone sounds a lot like they knew that this is going to happen, and they decided to not tell their players when they release Overwatch 2. So, by God, I mean, I already have seen people again harassing developers, or the dude, the man that, well, brought the news to the players in the interview. That's completely, just don't stop harassing people in general, maybe, would be great. Twitter, stop it. But I do think how they handled the situation was it's a lot of PR speak, right? It's a good way how they brought up the issues, and well, did a lot of flustering to the players, like, how PR people tend to do things. But in the end, it still feels like they were basically lying for us for maybe 1 year, maybe at least, since the release of Overwatch 2. And that obviously won't sit particularly great with the player base. Surprise.
Developers. That's always how it ends up being. I would say, I suppose, also the publisher, because there's a lot of money that they failed to rake in for many years. So to recap, then, we are getting under half of what was, maybe somewhat under half of what was originally promised. We are going to get the full story missions of Overwatch 2, similar to Overwatch 1. It will not be a full campaign all at once. We know that these missions are going to be added over time as a part of the seasonal content. Hero mechanics will generally not be altered from PvP to PvE. A full talent system with modified gameplay will not exist. Development on PvE with the hero mode seems to have been changed in late 2022. I imagine that is when the bullet went into the fully went into the back of that thing's head.
Yes,
that's when they essentially hit a realization that with the team that they had, the resources that they had, they would not be able to make a whole game worth of content while also keeping the Overwatch 2, I mean, pretty damn grueling, one season every 9 weeks content cadence going. And the audience is now only being told that, it's season 6, which is, guess what, like just under a year or something like that. After the launch of that is when it's going to happen. Ultimately, what happened here is that management and marketing did not set up people's expectations properly. They led people to believe that they were getting somewhat what was promised in 2019. That what they were essentially doing was opening Overwatch 2. I mean, they literally did call it like an open beta, didn't they? That they would launch it like that, hey, we got some Overwatch to play now, but hey, the real thing that we've been cooking up for years, that's coming next year, big hype. That obviously has not happened. This is a complete failure in product positioning and a failure in the anchoring of expectations.
Yeah, the hype train, right? Choo-choo. The thing again is, if they say we're going to get all the story missions from Overwatch 2, then I'm again from the hero mode, and I'm again wondering why they don't implement it again as a separate mode with the hero mechanics, but also just release that in a seasonal way. Right? Because I have to imagine that something of that hero mode with the talent trees and progression and whatever already exists behind the scenes. So if the problem is the refinement and the polishing, then why not just decide to push out the PvE mode in some form of an early access, and then basically add to it until the core is completed, and then add on to it with the seasonal model. I don't think that would be a problem, but in the end, it's very likely that the problem is not. I don't think the resources or the general planning is the real problem. In the end, it's very likely just the money, because they saw, hey, we are able to get, I don't know, let's say on average $20 from every player every 3 months, every season, basically. And so that's basically what is it? $80 per year. Like, I don't know, is season 2 months or is it about 3 months? I mean, it's a season, so probably, let's say $80, right? So they basically get the revenue from one player of $80, and the other option would be an Overwatch 2 PvE game mode full release that they could probably sell not even for full price of $60-70, but probably would have released for, again, maximum $40, similar to Overwatch 1. Like the original price of Overwatch 1. That's my theory, and in the end they just said, hey, that's so stupid to do. The seasonal model that we have now is so much easier, less time and resource intensive, plus it generates more constant revenue for us. So yeah, just follow the way of the money, and that's basically the result.
I'm sure you are aware of anchoring. It's one of those psychological concepts where, you know, in a negotiation, somebody will generally highball a number because then the ensuing conversation is framed from that higher position, right? So if you anchor people with the expectation of the 2019 reveal and then deliver this to them, they will not be happy. Especially after the Overwatch, bunch, like, I mean, fucking hell, if you stayed with Overwatch 1 over all that time, ouch. And then I think a bit of this is also quite damaging for them, because they were saying, like, Overwatch 2 has seen double the engagement of Overwatch 1.
Yeah, sure.
Like with the free-to-play refresh. And I'm just thinking to myself with that, like, you let Overwatch 1 wither in the vine, then Overwatch 2 comes out free-to-play, and you're only, like, going to half your previous baseline. I would have expected more, and that is, of course, when I bring in StarCraft 2 with its co-op commandos, which was, from what I understand, by far the most popular mode in StarCraft 2 that was actually putting out pretty good numbers, to the degree where I think a lot of people working on that project really think that they could have kept on going with that because of the strength of the co-op commandos mode.
Yes.
But
I mean, I don't know if how good it is to compare Overwatch to StarCraft, right? And it's still 2 different kinds of games. But yeah, I think the whole engagement thing compared to Overwatch 1 is true. And I think with the real PvE mode, it would be even bigger, because then you could just, that's what I said at the beginning, you could basically go for several player types. You have the PvE mode for the people that like progression, cosmetics, arbitrary numbers going up, and then you have the arcade modes for the people that just like the fun modes and stuff, and then you have the PvP mode with the casual PvP and the ranked mode, right? So so the game would be catered to several audiences, and that's a great thing. And now I personally expect that some of the PvE modes, PvE missions will come out, but I also expect them to slow the development of those modes, those missions down in the end. Like, I don't know, in a year or whatever. You won't get a PvE mission every season, but maybe every 2 seasons, or more on a irregular basis, maybe as separate events or something like that. But I don't think they will pour a lot of resources into those resource-intensive PvE missions with cinematics and all. I don't think that will happen.
Obviously, that's not happened. I bring up Co-op Commandos to say that there is a world where Overwatch 2 is far larger than it is right now, off the back of something like that Co-op Commandos mode that StarCraft had, that has that extremely broad appeal. There are so many people who like these characters, like this world, don't want a sweaty shooter. You go into some of the changes of Overwatch 2, it's a more sweaty game. Now that means I enjoy it, right? I live to get those 3 headshot pings in my tight burst as Baptiste. But that is not what a lot of people want from the Overwatch world. Now they can, you know, they can sample 1 or 2 courses from the menu every 9 to 18 weeks, depending on the content cadence. But ultimately, that is just some support for the ongoing live service where PvP is the main feature. And the reason why I think that's a problem is because for a lot of people, you know, you don't want to play, say, Star Wars Jedi Survivor 1 world at a time every 9 weeks.
True.
Or 1 quest at a time every 9 weeks. What people want to do is sit down and enjoy an experience. And, you know, maybe they'll have ongoing play after that. But because they don't have that, the cultural relevance somewhat gone. So that's the situation. If you're seeing headlines saying PvE is cancelled,
that's what I said before, right?
The hero mode with the talents, that sort of thing, that is cancelled. And that absolutely sucks. They just don't have a big enough team to do it. And I suppose you think about, you know, Call of Duty, where you've got, you know, probably thousands of developers. Look at all the studios. It takes 1.5 studios to make a Call of Duty now. And that is 1.5 studios a game with a 2-year development cycle per game. Maybe it's slightly more than that, who knows? But point basically is, content's really expensive, and evidently they never had the team size that they needed. World of Warcraft is only now at a stage where it's, I mean, really...
But I mean, it would be interesting to know what the team size was, and especially how it changed over time, right? Maybe also in comparison to other games like, as you said, World of Warcraft or whatever. Because we also had in the last few years, especially since the whole the whole sexual harassment stuff with the stolen breast milk. We had a lot of brain drain in Blizzard, right? We had very regularly, besides the fired problematic people, employees, we also had a lot of news about developers leaving Blizzard and opening up new studios. So there's a lot of drain, a lot of loss in terms of experience and workforce for Blizzard. And we don't know how they shifted the rest of their employees to the different projects, like now Diablo 4, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, and I don't want to say StarCraft because it doesn't feel to me like that gets development at all at this point, but yeah.
Really getting the content that it deserves. It's actually getting more content than I expected. World of Warcraft is, I actually think, as a game, the best it has been in like easily a decade. I think this expansion's better than Legion. A lot of that is off the back of just...
Sounds great.
They have the headcount to make the content, and evidently here, they don't have that. And that's what it is. It's a little bit like saying, hey, we've cancelled all future World of Warcraft expansions and we're only going to do patches. Well, if you're somebody who loves Mythic plus Dungeons and Raids, you'll be fine. But if you're somebody who wants, like, you know, oh, I'll show you a world, you're not going to enjoy that. I guess that's a bit of an analogy. Tell me what you think. What does this mean to you, your friends, your guild, the people you game with, the people in your Discord server? I would love to know. Of course, to support the channel, check out Shortform. They're a really awesome service. I use them all the time. And yeah, they're pretty great. All right, that's it from me. See you next time.
All right. Again, great video from Belluda. Fuck it.